This is Jordan Poyer, safety for the Buffalo Bills, and you are now listening to Cover One Buffalo Podcast. Let's go.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo Podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with our partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how are we doing?
I'm doing okay. For considering it was a week one victory, my wife's got me on this all liquid detox. I've sent you some pictures of the stuff that I'm drinking this week, man.
Horrible.
Tonight was the last night. I'm done with it. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to eat a big, fat, meaty breakfast. But right now, not great, man. So I need this show to bring me back up.
No, I appreciate it. Tonight we're presented by Uncle Jumbo's. Make sure you're checking out UncleJumbosDistillery.com. They're awesome presenting sponsor, local business, and excited. I'm actually going to get to see them tomorrow. So going to be a lot of fun and something we're really looking forward to and checking out the distillery. But tonight we are going to get into some Dolphins talk, and how better to get into Dolphins talk than Tom Ernisse from DolphinsTalk.com. You can find him at Dolphins Talk Tom. Tom, how we doing?
Good. How are you guys doing tonight?
Not too bad. Not too bad. It's interesting. Now, I was shocked at how much I needed football. I knew that I was going to be excited about it coming back, but Sunday was just awesome to gorge myself on football for 12 hours. And now reality setting in, kind of get into that next run. We'll open right up with, I know it's different not coming off a win, but still a competitive game and in a game that the Dolphins were underdogs and were in it the full game. Where was it versus your expectations and just your thoughts on the team overall after seeing that week one game?
It was flat. Expectations were not met. As fans, we expected a lot more from the team in week one. The defense played admirably, except the fact they just couldn't stop the run. Cam Newton ran all over the Dolphins defense, and they just couldn't get anything put together. So to give you an idea of how good week one went for the defense, they are number one against the pass in total stats, and they are worst against the run. So you pick your poison. Do you want to throw or do you want to run? So I don't really weigh out too much for week one in regards to the pass defense, because the Patriots really didn't have to do anything in regards of passing other than the underneath routes to like Julian Edelman. The outsides were pretty well covered by Byron Jones and Xavier Howard for about 47% of the snaps for him, as he was just getting worked back into the system since he was out pretty much all of camp. So expectations definitely were not met. And on offense, it was Ryan Fitztragic. As Buffalo guys, we know. You can get either direction with him. It's either going to be a really good game or a really bad game. There's really nothing in the middle right now.
So Aaron and I were talking before the show that it was almost hard to get a feel for it when there's only 19 pass attempts and they were so dink and dunk and little stuff and the swing passes and everything. It was kind of hard to get a read for, okay, is there an opportunity here? Was it because, the game plan that was there? And, we'll let Aaron kind of go right into that same topic.
Yeah, I want to get a feel for it because I think we did get a good feel for the Miami offense. And what I saw on watching tape and what it kind of seemed from the stats was there's a lot of balance right now to the Miami offense between run and pass plays. And you're watching the Bills versus the Jets this week. Do you see that changing? Do you think they're going to remain a really pretty much balance between the run and the pass? Or do you think they're going to try to attack what has been a weakness for the Buffalo Bills over the past few years with the Sean McDermott era is their run defense? Do you think they're going to look to attack that a little more this weekend? Or should we expect to see the same balance continued?
I think with Chan Gailey, it's all about balance. He wants to run a balanced attack. And to a point, it was kind of like a stubborn approach last week where he continued to try running the football, which for the most part, Myles Gaskin, who was a 7th-round pick a year ago, he actually was the most productive running back, where you had a guy like Jordan Howard who played the first series, and then we really didn't see him again until the fourth quarter touchdown to pull the game within 3. And Matt Breida didn't see the field until midway through the second quarter. So
I was shocked about that.
Yeah, that surprised me.
So I'm not sure what they were doing in regards of offense. I do expect them to try to keep it balanced, though. And I think depending on how things shake out for the rest of the week, Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds both banged up a little bit and unsure right now if they're going to play on Sunday. I think the Dolphins will want to try to remove some of that pressure for Ryan Fitzpatrick, because as the pressure went on in that game, he just got too antsy and he threw the ball. Yes, a couple were on the wide receivers. One was a blown pass interference in the end zone on Mike Gishiki, but I think Changeli is going to continue to try to balance it out, run 2 tight end formation, try to get some extra push up front with this newly formed offensive line who played admirably against the Patriots, only giving up 1 sack, which is an improvement from the year before when the Baltimore Ravens, I think, sacked the Dolphins over 7 times. So it's definitely a work in progress. Not having preseason definitely does not help.
Sure.
Especially with a team that turned over 49% of the roster. But I expect to see a balance out of Changeli, but I hope to see more Matt Breida in the offense. I hope to see more Jordan Howard than, Patrick Laird taking some of those reps away. I think Laird's a decent player, but Matt Breida and Jordan Howard are obviously much better. So we'll see how it plays out.
I want to dig into that offensive line a little bit because last week we did the Jets and leading up to the Jets, a lot of the talk was they totally revamped their offensive line and trying to build that up for a young quarterback. And you see the same thing happen in Miami. Obviously they have Ryan Fitzpatrick, but the plan is for a young quarterback at some point here. We just don't know when. 1 week in, I did like the way New England's defensive line looked. I do think the Bills' defensive line's a little bit better. They got a lot of pressure last week. What are you feeling about this matchup with your new look offensive line versus this Bills defensive line? What were your thoughts overall week 1 about getting a first look at these guys in real action?
I liked what I saw for the most part. I believe, Austin Jackson at left tackle, I think he did a very good job. He didn't give up any pressures or hurry or sacks against the Patriots defense. Jesse Davis actually played okay. Where he's like the Ryan Fitzpatrick of the offensive line. You just don't know what you're going to get every week with him. Solomon Kinley, a 4th-round pick. He's a road grader. He is a big boy. He played very well for his first game. Eric Flowers, who they signed in free agency, he struggled. But again, the cohesiveness of the offensive line in live games, communication, that's all got to get better. I think they are going to have a harder time against the Bills front. Definitely more aggressive than New England played last week. I expect the Bills to send the kitchen sink for the most part to get these offensive linemen rattled or confuse them to get after the quarterback early and often. So I think that's why Miami wants to establish a ground game. But overall, I like what I saw of the offensive line. I think they will continue to improve as long as everybody stays healthy. I think this will be a decent bunch. They just got to gel. They got to communicate better, and I think that happens game after game as we go through the season. And I think maybe by week 3 or 4, I think it will be a more cohesive unit.
I was certainly excited to see the Bills play the Jets and Dolphins early with that many new pieces on the offensive line.
Yeah.
I'd rather get those games early before they have a chance
to start to gel. Because we saw it last year. The Bills totally transitioned to a new offensive line, and it did take some time to gel. Yeah. And it, by probably, what do you say, Greg, week 8, 9, you felt like they really kind of hit their stride. So it does take a little bit of time. Another unit I want to look at, you guys just went up against a really good secondary in New England. Even though they've lost some pieces with COVID, they still have probably the best cornerback. I know Bills is probably going to get, all the Bills people are probably going to get at me about this, but Stephon Gilmore's probably still one of the best in the world at what he does. But I really like a couple of the pieces that you guys have wide receiver. I know you're hurt also from COVID, but Preston Williams is a guy that I really like for the last couple of years, and I thought he did some nice things in this game. And Devonte Parker, his snap count was a little low. I don't know what happened there. Maybe you could fill us in on what to expect from your wide receiving core this week.
Yeah, so Devonte Parker left the game early in the third quarter last week. He had a hamstring strain that he went into the game with, and he tweaked it early in the third quarter, so that's why his snap count went down as he was held out for the rest of the game as precaution. Preston Williams had a very good rookie campaign before he had his ACL torn on a punt return against the Jets in week 9, I believe, last year.
He gave Levi Wallace the business before he went.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I like what I've seen from Preston Williams. Outside of Parker and Williams, it's kind of an unknown. Jakeem Grant is a good player, but he's not a guy that you want on the field for over 50% of your offensive snaps. Isaiah Ford, who's been bouncing between the practice squad and active roster for the last few years, He is also he's a very good slot wide receiver, but again, a guy that you can't rely on. Malcolm Perry, who they drafted out of Navy, thankfully before Bill Belichick got his hands on him. I think he is going to turn a lot of heads. We may see him active this week. It really depends on Devonte Parker's status leading into the game, as he's questionable right now, limited in practice today. Yeah. Wide receiving group, the injury bug continues to kind of hinder this group. If Parker stays healthy as he did last year, I think he's in for another big season, and Preston Williams takes a lot of that pressure off because he is another fast, big wide receiver. And as you said, against Buffalo last year in Orchard Park, he definitely had a very good showing against Levi Wallace in the Bills secondary in that game. But going into this game, I would expect that the Bills are going to play a lot of press. I think they're going to try to get the Dolphins could not separate away from J.C. Jackson and Stephon Gilmore last week and Jason McCourty. They just could not separate from him at all. So Fitzpatrick had the hardest time trying to throw the ball to guys because they weren't open. So he was forcing, I think 40% of his passes were forced. So he had a very difficult time. So if the Dolphins can figure out a way to get these guys more open off the line of scrimmage, I think that we'll see a decent game. But again, they're going against, Trey White, who's a very good corner. I know you guys are without Josh Norman. He was just put on IR. So whoever is going to play against Preston Williams, I think that's going to be the key matchup between the wide receivers and the corners for the Bills.
Yeah, I certainly hope that they give Levi Wallace a little bit more help than they left him on the island against Williams last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, hopefully there's a little bit of safety help over the top because, I think the speed there is the problem for Levi Wallace.
Yeah.
Is he's not that – he's like Josh Norman where he just doesn't have that athleticism to keep up, and hopefully you see a lot of zone. But I want to get your thoughts on a guy because I don't get to watch a ton of Miami Dolphins just leading up to the games here. I was pounding the table a couple years ago for Mike Gishiki. What's going on with him? Where's his development at? And why aren't we hearing more about him? Because he was such an intriguing prospect at the time when he came out. Has it been the quarterback play? Has it been the offense? Has it been his own development? I know that he's gotten a lot better in blocking and some of his assignment stuff that takes a little bit of time for tight ends to do, but I'm not seeing necessarily the production that I've expected out of this kid coming out of college.
Well, year one was Adam Gase's fault. Adam Gase decided to keep him as an inline blocker with Gishiki. His downfall was that he wasn't a very good blocker. So Adam Gase, being Adam Gase, decided, hey, let me keep him in as an inline blocker for 70% of the plays and not have him go out for any passes. So when Gase left, Flores came in, Chad O'Shea, last year's offensive coordinator, they wanted to get him the football. He's very athletic. He has a very, very good catch radius. He pretty much catches everything that's thrown his way. So last year he came on. Now that he had an opportunity, I think the Dolphins are going to try to continue to put him in as a focal point of the offense. He's, to me, like a Jimmy Graham back from like 2010, 2011, where they can line him up inside, hand in the ground, tight end, or they can split him out wide or in the slot. So he can cause some mismatch problems with opposing linebackers and maybe even slot corners, which could, again, open up Preston Williams and Devonte Parker on the outside because he is a big guy. I think in week one against the Patriots, Bill Belichick made it a point because Gishiki hurt them in that week 17 game last year. So I think Bill Belichick had a game plan to make sure they did not let him get open and get the offense moving because Gishiki is a big part and a focal point of the offense. We just didn't see it week one just because too many mistakes, not enough communication. And, I think that could change this week. It all really depends on what Chan Gailey brings to the table this week. I hope, the years away from football really hasn't clouded his mind and opens up the offense a little bit more and lets the players play, not be so refined. Get the guys out there like Breida and all those other guys. Get them out there and play.
So as we kind of pivot over to the Dolphins defense and this Bills offense, I know watching it, obviously I'm going to ask about Shaq Lawson and see how he did coming over here. But from a defensive line standpoint, I obviously everyone on Twitter is talking about the All-22 not being out there, but in the condensed film I was able to watch a couple times through, Christian Wilkins flashed multiple times. So I'm really curious to see how he matches up with Mitch Morris this week. But let's start with the defensive line there. How was Shaq Lawson's first game as a Dolphin, and how intriguing was it to see that big step forward from Wilkins?
Shaq's first game was not very good. He did not do a good job of setting the edge against the Patriots, which is why Cam Newton had such success on the read options and the quarterback sweeps. Christian Wilkins was absolutely fantastic. Wilkins started playing much better, I think, after the punch he threw in Buffalo last year where he got kicked out. He started playing a lot better. I love what I see out of him. I love that they drafted him in the first round in 2019. I think he is such a good football player, and now his physicality is showing. You know, he was pushing guys around on the New England offensive line. He got at Cam Newton once for a sack. He had a couple passes defended, another quarterback hit. So he is a guy that's coming into his own, and I think he will have a good chance to win a lot of one-on-one battles. And, regarding, again, Shaq Lawson, Emmanuel Ogbah, Devon Gottschall, the other guys that are starting up front, Ogbah struggled just the way that Shaq Lawson did, terrible at setting the edge. And those guys were brought in to set the edge.
Yeah, it's supposed to be both of their strengths.
There's both their strengths. Unfortunately, they're not they didn't perform in week one. But again, Coach Flores said it's about communication, and those guys understood that their communication just was not good. Like, who had the quarterback, who has the running back? They just completely dropped the ball on the read options last week. I think they'll be more prepared this week because there is a lot of film on Josh Allen and the Buffalo offense. They've played him already a couple times in the last year. So they know, I think, the strengths, but they have to go and perform. They have to be able to stop that element of the game, because if Josh Allen does what he did at Dolphins last year, it's going to be another long day for the defensive line.
Yeah, and I was actually shocked looking through some of the numbers. That the snap counts were kind of crazy. They kept Lawson and Ogbah on the field 94 and 86% of the time. Like short of Aaron Donald or someone like that, I don't remember seeing those kind of numbers for a defensive lineman at all. It's crazy.
Yeah, that was a lot. And I think they kept him on there because the Patriots game plan just really went to the focus of the running game. And, having Cam Newton run the ball 15 times, which for his long-term prognosis is probably not good. But they were able to get it to work against the Dolphins defense last week and, tooled them up for 210 yards rushing. So I want to see improvement from that group. I think we will see improvement, but how much improvement will remain to be seen.
So kind of drop into the next layer here. I saw, some flashes back and forth. Jerome Baker is a player that is such a night and day for me, because when he's going forward, when he's stuffing the run, when he's run blitzing, when he's, coming in and just running downhill, he is a monster. And if you can get him having to turn his back and flip his hips or go in coverage, I think you can really take advantage of him. And I'm curious to see, we'll get to the secondary in a minute here, but what did you see in his game, and how do they help protect that when he has such a great skill in one area but is possibly a liability in the other?
I think that starts with the slot guy. If it's Nick Needham or Noah Igbenogany, I think those are the guys that are going to have to help him out in the event that he's kind of left on an island. Those guys are going to have to pick up a little bit of the slack in the event that Jerome Baker can't keep up with the guys. So I love his game, sideline to sideline linebacker. He's very physical. He blew through the line of scrimmage, I think the first or second drive of the game against the Patriots, and just lit up Cam Newton without him really knowing. So it was a really good A-gap blitz. He was able to get after it. But he does struggle in pass, which was kind of Raekwon McMillan's problem too. But McMillan was only a two-down linebacker, where Baker is a three-down linebacker, but at times he definitely can struggle. He struggled last year against the pass, even though that defense was historically bad last year. I think Brian Flores will get him into better positions on Sunday, and I hope that Jerome Baker can continue his tackle onslaught, but I hope it's for good causes and not the fact that they're giving up way too many running yards.
So the next one is tough, because I'm confused at how much is chicken in the egg in what we saw in the first week. So you have a Dolphins team with a great investment in the secondary, a lot of talent. You have a Patriots team who didn't invest a lot in outside weapons. Right. And then the game plan matched it exactly. They weren't going to try to throw inferior outside receivers at elite covering corners. So they just didn't do it, period. And I'm curious to see, was that a indication that, hey, the coverage was good, or did they never even really test it? Did you see Newton having to come off his first read and they were going to go outside, or did they just only focus on the middle of the field? And then the Bills aren't quite in that spot. They've invested a fair amount of money. We have a lot of money in Stephon Diggs and John Brown and Cole Beasley and investing in Gabe Davis in the draft. And do you think that they're going to possibly test this shiny new secondary that the Dolphins put together?
I think they will. I see no reason not to. I think the key to the game is going to be Stephon Diggs and Byron Jones. Byron Jones was on the field for 23 dropbacks last week. He only gave up one catch for 6 yards. I think Cam Newton tried to avoid that side of the field as much as possible, and they really attacked the middle of the Dolphins defense with the slot guy. So Edelman was Julian Edelman, which was unfortunate, but that was one of the keys to beating them. Is you got to try to wrap him and not let him get free in the open field, and they just couldn't do that. On the other side, Xavier Howard, he only played 47% of the snaps last week. He's still recovering from his knee injury. On the field, he looked good. I think they just limited his snaps to just not rush him fully back and having him play 80% of the team's snaps on defense. I think it's going to be a good matchup between Brown, Howard, Jones, and Diggs. I think that's going to be a test for Josh Allen. I know that he is, he's been going downfield a lot, and he's going to take his shots. I think it's going to be a good enough matchup where we will probably see a little bit of give and take between both sides there. It'll be fun to see, though.
Yeah. So we've come to the point where we're going to put you on the spot after seeing the opening games in each week, seeing, the new additions the Dolphins have added versus, what Josh Allen was able to do last year. Yeah. Coming down to Miami for the first time, coming down to that heat and humidity. What are you expecting to see this week, and what do you think the prediction will be in the score?
I think what we're going to see is, good to see some normalcy and have fans in the stands first and foremost. That's going to be nice to see and hear. Not the fake crowd noise that we've heard last week.
It was weird. It was weird several times.
It's so weird.
It is really.
I think what we're going to see, because of the heat and humidity there, I think the Dolphins are really going to try to focus on running the football and try to wear down the Bills' defense. It doesn't matter who's flying to South Florida. Nobody is used to that heat other than the Dolphins, because that's all they practice in all summer long. So I think that's what they're going to try to do, establish the ground game, try to keep Josh Allen and the Bills' offense off the field as much as possible to control the clock. And if you can control the clock and not turn the ball over, I think the Dolphins do have a chance. But based on the talent level for Buffalo, the team being together for a few years, and the Dolphins are still just learning, to communicate well with all these new pieces, I think this is the Bills' game to win. I'm going to say final score probably going to be 30-21 Buffalo. I think Josh Allen poses that big threat, and if the Dolphins can't stop Josh Allen from getting out of the pocket and using his legs and getting the ball downfield, it's going to be a long day for the Dolphins defense, but I think they are going to improve over last week. I'm obviously hopeful for a Dolphins win, but
sure.
If I'm looking at it, I think that the Bills will probably end up winning the game.
Awesome.
No, we appreciate it very much, and hopefully later on this season, I've actually braced Bills fans that I think this is the last time they're going to see Ryan Fitzpatrick on a football field from a Bills standpoint. Yeah. So later on in the year, we may have a different discussion about the direction. And Nick Lowe was talking. I'm excited when we talk AFC East rivalry. I grew up with Kelly versus Marino, and the AFC East rivalry for me is Buffalo and Miami. And I'm really excited that between Brian Flores and Sean McDermott and Chris Greer and Brandon Beane and the direction both of them have gone and the build that they've had, I think we're going to get back to that. And I think that we're going to start seeing those kind of battles in the future here. So I'm hopeful that we're able to have those kind of fun discussions going forward.
I'm annoyed at how much Flores is similar to Sean McDermott in establishing a culture, getting more out of players than he should, out of more of the mediocre part of the roster and the depth part of the roster. Everyone was talking about that team was going to tank, and I saw the way they were playing right out of week one. I said, nobody's tanking for this guy. Like, they're going to go out and play for this guy, and it's very annoying how I think he's going to have a lot of success in this league. So it's going to be a fun time to be a Miami Dolphin fan.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say is that the blueprint that the Dolphins brought to the table last year was the same year they brought in the guy named Marvin Allen from Buffalo. So I think Marvin Allen took the blueprint of what Buffalo did, stripped down the top-end part of that roster, overaged, overpriced talent, bring in young players, develop those guys. And, I think that year two of this rebuild, again, more improvement. I think 2021 is going to be the season that we really see the Dolphins flourish, especially with that guy they Tua. Yeah, that guy.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, I have high hope for Tua. I was high on him for 2 years when Tannehill was on his final year. I love his game. I love his personality. The documentary, I know Bills fans really don't care, but if you get a chance, Tua's documentary on Fox Sports, it's a really good in-depth look about the person and why he is playing football. And I think he is going to be the AFC East for the Dolphins and the Bills. I think they're going to have some good quarterback battles over the years and bring back that light of the days of Dan Marino versus Jim Kelly and not the days of Rob Johnson versus Cleo Lemon. I mean, we just can't have that anymore. I want real quarterback play in this division again with Tom Brady gone.
Before we let you go, I do have to – I saw you on Twitter the other night. I got to apologize for what happened to your Celtics there in the last minute, man. That was brutal. That was a tough one.
It's the greatest block I've ever seen in the game in my life.
Yeah, man. Tatum had that thing and out of nowhere.
Oh man! So not only am I going to possibly hear all this stuff on Sunday, but I'm also going to hear it about basketball. Oh, come on! Oh my gosh!
Before we let you go, tell the fans what they can expect at DolphinsTalk.com and where to find you.
So check out the website, DolphinsTalk.com. We put on shows every day via a podcast, DolphinsTalk.com daily. We have pregame show leading up to kickoff. We call it Countdown to Kickoff. I know, genius, right? And then we have a postgame wrap-up show that drops Sunday night into Monday morning where we talk about the game and talk about the things that last week was what we didn't do well. We found some positives, but hopefully this week will be a little bit different. But, you can find me on Twitter at Dolphins Talk Tom. Our main page is at Dolphins Talk. We have great content, great writers. And, I appreciate you guys having us on. For Dolphins fans that are watching this, be sure to follow these guys and get an insight on what's going on here in Western New York.
Appreciate it, man. We'll talk soon.
All right. Absolutely. Thank you.
Good luck to you again.
So, Aaron, again, we're very fortunate to have good guests that come on. We've got, for anybody listening, we've got some really good ones lined up already for some of the coming weeks. But Tom and the team down at DolphinsTalk.com do an awesome job. Make sure you're checking them out. And I thought he was fair. I thought that he was very reasonable. There's a lot of talent here, and I'm not far off of what Tom's expecting here in the game. But I also am not far off of the reason that they're optimistic and the reason that they're have their hopes high going forward because they've assembled a lot of talent.
Yeah, I was off of pretty much the show and everything during the offseason and off of Twitter, and I got to say, man, I saw what the Dolphins were doing. And, we've talked about it all the time. I'm not a big cap guy. I don't particularly care. I just want my team to win, and we can figure out the money later. I just want a Super Bowl. That's really all I want.
That's it.
Is that too much to ask?
I'm not asking
But so cap aside, football players that they're bringing in, I like what they're doing a lot. I love Flores. I like Greer. I'm a big fan of Tua. Obviously, I was pounding the table for Shaq Lawson. I think that contract's a little steep. If we are going to talk about money, it is one that's a little steep. But no, I really like what they're doing. And like I said, it really kind of just annoys the crap out of me that I like it so much.
So as we kind of get into our flow here, one of the topics that Tom touched on is maybe where the Bills are going to try to go after this team. And I think it's going to be interesting to be able to dive in. And we'll make it the player spotlight for this week. And it's really going to be about Jerome Baker against, I'm going to say both Devin Singletary and Dawson Knox. And just where do we think the best opportunity is. And for you guys that are listening now, make sure you're checking out the Cover One matchup show. Just awesome work. We got some really exciting stuff coming this week from Eric and Russell and Christian diving into this. And one of the things that you and I have talked about all week is, do we test them with Xavier Howard and all the investments in the secondary and by adding Byron Jones, or do we try to take advantage of what we talked about with Tom to try to get Baker out there on an island?
Yeah, so I think when I was watching, obviously we didn't have the all-22, so it's hard to really see what Jones, and plus the 19 passes that the Patriots threw didn't give you a good indication, even if we had the all-22, what to expect out of this new look defensive backs. But the talk's been Diggs versus Jones and Allen taking shots downfield, and that's the premier matchup. And yes, on paper, I agree, names, it is the premier matchup, and that is what people probably want to see. But I think the most important pivotal matchup, at least Bills offense to Miami defense, is attacking that middle of the field. Yeah. Go back. I urge fans to go back and watch some of the games last year of Baker in coverage. If I'm Brian Dable and I'm watching Baker, you hit it on the head when you were talking to Tom. You watch him turn at all. He runs around confused. He just doesn't have a feel. It reminds me of Preston Brown. Early in Preston Brown's career in coverage, except he's faster, he's more athletic, but he was still just always out of his spot, always out of coverage. I think the Bills have a huge opportunity to attack. We didn't see a lot of production out of the tight ends last week, and I think we should expect some more production out of them. And if I'm Dable, I'm just trying to find ways to get Singletary matched out there one-on-one with Baker, because I'm taking that matchup all day long. And if I can get Beasley out there on the linebacker, oh boy, I'm going to exploit the crap out of that too. I think they're going to be able to do some of that also with some of the jet motion stuff with McKenzie, get McKenzie out in space and clear out some of the DBs. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to expose those linebackers in the passing game. But I think ultimately we'll still see a Bills passing game that is right around the 60-40 we saw. I know we looked at what New England did. It's not going to be that.
No.
I think there's still going to be a 60-40.
For anybody who isn't sure, New England ran the ball 42 times and passed 19.
It was like 79% of their.
Literally out of like the 1960s in the NFL. And I'm curious to see, I think fans should brace themselves for, maybe we see Lee Smith active this week. I think Tyler Kroft could matter in this game. Obviously, Dawson Knox is a big piece of that. I loved what we saw of both Zach Moss and Devin Singletary coming out of the backfield to the point where I don't know who it would be, but maybe you could even see a logic of TJ Yeldon over an extra wide receiver. I think it's that. I think that I'm curious to see, are they going to start using some of those actives and inactives and the depth of this roster specific to the game plan and matchup? We saw the Patriots line up and punch the Dolphins in the mouth. And I'm curious, are they going to want to have that option to do that and not lean into, just like last week, we didn't run up the middle a lot because that's where the Jets were good. Well, we're probably not going to pass to the outside a ton because that's where the Dolphins are good.
Yeah, and running up the middle is going to be a struggle. Like we talked about, Wilkins is going to be a challenge for more. So I do think it's going to be there. And the linebacking core doesn't get a lot better in pass coverage outside of Baker. Roberts isn't great in pass coverage. Van Noy is probably their best.
He's versatile, but it's not, coverage isn't his specialty. His versatility is also, he's more like a Lorenzo Alexander. His versatility is pass rushing.
He's sound, and if he has to drop back into coverage, he is the best at what they have. He's not the mobile athletic linebackers like we have here in Buffalo. Hopefully we have them this weekend. But so it stood out usually when I'm watching the tape and looking for something to stand out to me to exploit or attack. It usually doesn't stand out like it did to me with Miami and their linebackers matched up against our running backs and tight ends. If it's that obvious to an idiot like me, Brian Dable's scheming up some fun stuff this week. And I expect to see a lot of the same creativity we saw with the pistol formations, the jet sweep stuff, and to just keep those guys out of position, keep those guys guessing. Because Miami wants to play man with the guys we have on the outside. And I think everyone's talking up. You saw the distribution that we had to the guys on the outside last week. They're planning for it. They're planning that we're going to test them. I'm not saying we're not going to go out and test those guys, but I see heavy dose of playing to the middle of the field and getting the ball in the running back's hands.
Yeah, and I think Nick asked a good question. Do we think it's going to be a big game for Beasley? And I think that seeing Edelman's game matters. And we're, like we said, we're not going to tilt as far as New England did. So we're also not going to throw none outside the hash marks and outside the numbers because Stephon Diggs and John Brown are better than what the Patriots have. So we can test them. But you also don't want to have – I don't want 46 pass attempts this game. That's not what makes sense against a secondary like this. That's not our best – game plan to take advantage of the matchup that we have here. I do hope that we still pass more than we run. I do hope that maybe it's lower than 60-40 for a game like this. Maybe it's 55-45 or what we were last year, which was 53-47. That could make sense in a game like this. And I like it that we can vary like that and that we can go back to games where we can lean into it and be really heavy. I know for anyone who saw the metrics that came out today, while the game was still in question and during the neutral game script time period, the Bills were the fourth most pass-heavy team in the NFL last week. So I love the fact that that's where they leaned because that's what made sense in that matchup. In this matchup, I don't know that makes sense as much. They should dial it back a little bit. So for the Uncle Jumbo's player spotlight, we thought that matchup with Jerome Baker, whether you want to make your call with Dawson Knox or a surprise game from Tyler Kroft or both Moss and Singletary coming out of the backfield, I think that's where everybody should be watching to see us take advantage of that. And make sure you're checking out the matchup show for even more information on this and to really get good insight into how to take advantage of the Dolphins this week. All right.
Yeah, I love that matchup, man.
Switching gears, now for the first time, we are going to have and launch our new segment from our sponsor, West Her Automotive Group. Really excited. Everybody listening here, a great place to go and get a fair deal on a car. And when you're doing that kind of negotiation, you got to get down to numbers. So let's talk numbers. What are you expecting this week, Aaron?
Well, so numbers thing I want to talk about is obviously this week, the big conversation in Bills everywhere you went on the internet was Josh Allen running the ball and what happened in the red zone in the fumble. Hindsight, terrible. Nobody wants to see the fumble. True. Unacceptable. Can't happen. We talked about it in the post-game show. We've talked about it ad nauseum all over the place. Can't happen. But a lot of what I was being told was we got to hand it off to the running backs. We got to get it to the backs in the red zone and just milk it and get the field goal. First of all, before we get to the numbers, if they do that, Sean McDermott's getting ripped apart for getting conservative and trying to milk the clock. So I don't want to hear it. Again, hindsight's 2020. But let's get into the numbers for a second because I hated what I saw out of the Buffalo Bills in the red zone. We got there 8 times. That was fantastic. Loved what Brian Daboll did to get us there 8 times. When we got there, when it came to rushing, they had 12 attempts for a total of 8 yards for 0.66 yards per carry in the red zone. Unacceptable. When you draft really Zach Moss to do what he's supposed to do, that's unacceptable. When you have Josh Allen, even they only had the 2 runs in the red zone with Josh Allen. If where I'm running Josh Allen the most is there. That's where he's got all of his career touchdowns, mostly running the ball. So that's where I'm using the most. He did have the touchdown for 2 yards, but then he also had the fumble. So that's something that I really need to see an improvement out of the Buffalo Bills. Not just this week coming, but going forward is better. I expect when they drafted Zach Moss, I expected that number to be much better in the red zone because that's essentially what we got out of Frank Gore last year in the red zone. And so that's not an improvement to me.
Correct. Yeah. And I think that's a great way to put it is that we expected there to be a significant improvement from Frank Gore to Zach Moss. And that wasn't on Moss exclusively. He didn't have a bad game. The Bills running game had a bad game. And for everyone who was out there, I kept having this argument. I said, if your frustration was that you're trying to spot that, I don't want them to run when they're up by this much, or I don't want them to run when, it's 3 runs in a row and both of them happen to be the time that he fumbled, you don't have a called run problem. You have a fumbling problem. And that's okay. It's okay to be anti-fumbling. I'm anti-fumbling too. And it's, that's an all right frustration to have. that's something that we need to hold Josh accountable for. He needs to not fumble, because Kyler Murray ran the ball 13 times and didn't fumble, and Lamar Jackson ran the ball 12 times and didn't fumble, and Cam Newton ran the ball 15 times and didn't fumble. I want that to be an option in our offense. I don't want it every game. For anyone listening, Aaron and Eric and I went back and forth in our private chat. I don't want there to be 14 rushing attempts. That's too much for me. But on occasion, when the matchup and game plan calls for it, we need to have the opportunity and the ability to go to that. And we can't worry that, oh, man, if we have 8 designed runs, that's too many. He's going to put 2 of them on the carpet. That can't be one of the alternatives. He needs to just not fumble. It's just that simple.
It's not going to happen, though. He's going to fumble, and Lamar Jackson fumbles. It's true. I mean, the guys that Kyler Murray is a much different, much more protected runner. He's super athletic, but he rarely takes hits. I would love for Josh Allen to become Kyler Murray. It's not going to happen. A tiger doesn't change his stripes all that much. He's going to take
a quick reference for what Aaron's talking about. Out of the 13 runs Kyler Murray had, he got tackled once. The other 12 times he got out of bounds or slid.
Yes. And it's beautiful what he does. I love that. I want Josh Allen to do that. He'll never be that player. It's just like he's still always going to be the player that overthrows John Brown in the end zone every once in a while. Like, those throws are going to exist. It's the Josh Allen experience. You take the good with the bad. I agree. We want to limit the fumbling. It's not going to ever go away. He's going to put the ball on the ground. But I think ultimately he's such a weapon with his legs that the potential for the good plays outweighs that, as long as it's not 2 a game or 1 every game. I don't want him averaging a fumble a game. He's got to clean it up. Nobody's saying he doesn't, but I want to keep using him. And if they do keep using him, expect more. He's still going to, he will have more fumbles this year. I promise.
It's not going to be 0.
No, it won't be 0. He's not going to start sliding all the time to avoid contact. It's just not who he is. I want to see him get out of bounds. A little off, but Dan Orlovsky said it on ESPN, and he's not a guy that I've been kind to in the past, but he said that the Bills have decided to weaponize Josh Allen, and I totally agree. And with that weaponization of his biggest strengths is going to come some risk, and the risk is fumbling, and you don't want to see it, but it is going to happen. But in the red zone, man, I'm not going to be one of these guys that yells at them for running Josh Allen in the red zone. He has had too much success in his short career running the ball in the red zone as maybe the biggest weapon of this Buffalo Bills offense right now, until Zach Moss takes off to be the guy we think he is. I think he's still currently the biggest weapon they have. They don't have that big receiver, and Dawson Knox hasn't proven to be that reliable guy yet in the red zone. Can you think of anyone else that you'd rather have the ball in the red zone if you need a score?
No, well, not to this point. I think Zach Moss can get there. I think Dawson Knox can get there. I think that we have potential for that. Right now, our best red zone weapon is Josh Allen. And it's I hope that we can develop beyond there. And as the chemistry grows with Stephon Diggs, I think that maybe we can get to that point with him as well. But right now, we're not at that phase yet. So, and one other piece that I know I talked to, a friend of mine who's a Jets fan, and he said one of the things that he kept bringing up was that he wasn't nearly as frustrated about the running for Josh Allen. It was that he was impossible to sack, and that the Jets got their hands on him in the backfield 5 different times. And in addition to that, he had a handful that he sidestepped or juked his way out of, and that's part of his value too, and that his when you compare it to Kyler Murray, and that he's not always going to get out of the way because he knows he has exceptional contact balance. And Ben Roethlisberger had that for a long time, where, you can sit there and have guys kind of hanging off of you and still make the throw. And when you can do that, it's really hard to unlearn that. It's really hard to give that up when you know that you can pull it off and it looks awesome and everybody praises you when you do it. And then the next time they knock the ball out of your hands, it's tough. It's really hard to undo that. And it's just, like you said, it's take the good with the bad. We hope it's less frequent. We hope it's slightly fewer fumbles. It's never going to be 0 fumbles.
No, and the most he fumbled last year was those plays you were just talking about. It wasn't in the run. He had 6 fumbles in the run, but most of his fumbles came.
Yeah, 12. Yeah, the last 18 games, he has 18 fumbles. I think it was like 16 or 14 last year.
Yeah, and he put a lot of them on the ground doing that, escaping, eluding, which the ball's out a little bit more. But you don't want him to stop being who he is, because he does make the special plays when everything else breaks down. That's what's special about him. When he first got here, and it was between him and Nate Peterman, that was my point. I wrote an article, like, the reason you start Josh Allen because he's that playmaker. When everything else breaks down and your wide receivers are running around scrambling, he can make plays for you and change a game with that ability to make plays. And unfortunately, with high risk comes high reward, or with high reward comes high risk. So it's going to happen. Let's eliminate it a little bit, Josh. And so we can stop talking about that every week.
So now in our next part of the West Her Let's Talk Numbers, we're going to give some score predictions here. I made you go first last time, so I'll lead off this time.
Fine.
I actually, it's funny, we invited Tom on from Dolphins Talk. He actually predicted a bigger Bills victory than I'm going to predict. So it was a little off-putting when he predicted 30-21. I think it's going to be pretty similar to the Patriots game. I think it's going to look close for most of the game, but I think the Bills are really going to control it. I don't think the Dolphins are going to be completely in it, even though I think they're going to put up some points here or there. Preston Williams is a tough matchup for Levi Wallace. Mike Gishiki is an athlete. I think they could try to throw all three running backs at us, and it's not going to be like an Eagles game last year, but I think they could have some success running the ball, especially if both Edmonds and Milano were out, which I'll let you guys know. I think we're going to be safe and we're going to sit both of them. So I think you're talking a Tyrell Dodson, AJ Klein game. I think the Bills are in it, and then they get a score at the end that puts them up by enough to make it look like a good game. I'm going to say 27-17. I think it's going to be a 10-point game. I think it's going to be 20-17 there in the fourth quarter, and then they put up a score to kind of pull away a little bit. And I think that it's going to be a more balanced attack from the Bills, not quite as pass heavy as this past game was, because I think that's what Dable's going to do all year, is go after the weakness of that defense.
I think that's a pretty good estimation. I'm close to where you're at, so I'll get it right out of the way. I'm at 24-17. I think this is going to be a tough game for the Bills. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is just annoying and sneaky enough to make enough plays to keep them in it and to get some points. And I think he's accurate enough that he's going to give the ball back to Buffalo a couple times in one way or another. And so the Bills are going to be able to get up on them by just their defense getting the ball back to the offense. But I think that their defense presents some challenges. Obviously, we talked about the linebackers, and I do think that's a way to exploit. But overall, this is a much better defense than we faced, and I'm interested to see this offensive line going up against better talent, because we were praising Darrell Williams this last week, and Josh had the most time to throw, which isn't always necessarily an offensive line stat. There's a lot that's baked into that, but overall it looked like a really good performance without having the all 22 to get that other angle of the offensive line. I want to see them get challenged, because following week, one of the biggest challenges there is defensive line against the Rams is coming. So I want to see this test against Wilkins. I want to see Shaq Lawson, man. He's a guy that did a lot of things for Buffalo, especially in the run defense. I want to see how they use some of these bigger guys that they brought in on the offensive line against him. I think it's going to be a little bit of a grind, but I do have the Bills ultimately pulling it out. If I'm a betting man, which I'm definitely not, I don't like putting my money on risk, I'm going to take Josh Allen against the Miami Dolphins until it proves me wrong. He's just some guys just perform against other teams, and you don't know why, and you don't know what it's going to be, but they always do. And until he loses to the Miami Dolphins, I'm not going to bet against him.
He's been AFC Player of the Week in half of his games against the Dolphins in his career.
I love it, because I'm with you, man. It's always going to be the rivalry for me. As much as I hate New England, that was never a rivalry because we never won. Miami, growing up, that's the rivalry.
Yeah, and I've had a couple people ask here about Fitzpatrick and Tua. I do want to be clear with you guys. I think that we will see Tua this year. It's not going to be tomorrow. They're not going to. And for anybody who doesn't know, Brian Flores and Ryan Fitzpatrick are really close friends. And
they're like actually close in age too.
Yes, they're actually very similar in age. Flores looks to him as his, you hear McDermott talk all the time about the leadership council, player-driven leadership, all those different pieces. Fitzpatrick's that guy for Flores. And there's other guys that are part of that, but Fitzpatrick's by far the biggest piece of that. He respects him a great deal. And don't get me wrong, if I think that, if Fitz has a 4 interception game and they're pulling away, could we see Tua for a minute of mop-up time, maybe, but not in a competitive moment. If this game is in there, I do think if you look, the Dolphins' first 6 games are really tough. You're talking about like San Francisco and the Bills and the Rams and some really good defenses, good defensive lines. I don't think they want Tua to face that. They then go in a stretch where it's like the Cardinals, the Jets, some games that are very manageable. I think that we do see Tua for the second half of this season. I don't think we're going to see it Sunday.
And also, Chan Gailey and Ryan Fitzpatrick have a history together, and we talk about this stuff a lot. Coaches trust what they have experienced before, what they know, and those relationships of having gone into battle with a guy. And Chan's been there with Ryan Fitzpatrick and had some success before. And Ryan Fitzpatrick probably knows a Chan Gailey offense better than anyone in the world. So Chan's also going to probably be pounding the table to keep Fitzpatrick and allow Tua to learn. And like you said, maybe get over the hump of some of these rough defenses before they just throw them to the wolves. Because I don't think Miami's offensive line, like Tom was saying, is ready yet to put Tua back there, especially the injury that he just came off of. I think, get him up against some worse defenses maybe later in the year. But if this Miami team, it's going to be tough for them if they go down 0-2. But if they can go on a run at any point, that might keep Tua on the bench. And Ryan Fitzpatrick is just sneaky at keeping who should be the starter on your team not playing. Like, he's just good enough everywhere he goes to keep the starter out of the conversation. So I could see a scenario where Ryan Fitzpatrick takes these guys for a run in the middle of the season, and then you have a tough, hey, well, we can't pull him yet.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see where those pieces come in. And one other group we wanted to share real quick here that Aaron and I have been using throughout this year is something that we are going to go back and forth. We had our bets last year, and one that we're using this year is called tallysite.com. And they're ones that help us do a graphic that is going to show our picks. So we're going to pick against the spread and for the over-under. Aaron got me in week 1, 53%, and I was at 51%. So we'll go through there and have some fun with it and be able to share those. If you're interested, you can actually make your picks and rank yourself against the experts and be able to show they have all the guys from ESPN, CBS, Yahoo, all the different groups on there. I actually think the Buffalo News is using this now as well. So you'll see our graphic embedded in our post to show our picks so you can see what we pick and you can come up against us. So we'll share that here in the comments for everything. But tallysite.com, they're going to go through and show our picks as the season goes so we can go through and have a competition here. And Aaron and I will put up a little bit of money for fun to go to charity. The winner of the loser's chair would pay the winner's charity here at the end of the year, whoever has the highest sports IQ. When they get to the sports IQ, they actually give you extra credit if you pick a less popular pick. So if you're picking and go out on a limb and you're right, you get additional points. If you're picking someone that everybody's picking, you get a little bit less credit. So they have a whole algorithm that gives you credit for more courageous picks. So Aaron got me in week 1 and is off to a slight start.
Yeah, but man, I had a huge lead on you last year with our bets, and out of nowhere, you just came back and demolished. It was like the comeback game. Yeah. You're like Frank Wright, man. I just couldn't stop you every week. It was just getting me nervous and more nervous. And then I put $100 up to the charity of your choice, and phenomenal charity, and love the work that they do. So that made me feel good. That I hate losing to you. It drove me nuts, but to give some money to a good charity was all worth it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And for anyone who's aware, that was the PKU Alliance. My son has a rare genetic disease, and it was very appreciative of Aaron to support them, and certainly worthwhile if anyone's interested in making a donation to them. So it's coming to the end of the show here, and it's something that I'm starting to get into a new rhythm and feel for this Bills season, and that it's weird to have confidence. It's weird to feel like, hey, we should win this game. And to talk to guys like Tom, when we're talking to other people, and when I would go on other people's shows and talk through things, it would always make me question, okay, am I being a homer because I think we can win when everybody else is picking it, and some of those different pieces. And it's really a weird feeling to feel confident and to feel like we're going to win. I think that we should win, and I think we're going to.
Yeah. Before I started taking on the show and becoming a more, in my opinion, pragmatic fan, my wife doesn't think so. She thinks I'm a total homer that doesn't understand. But all my friends from my early 20s are like, dude, I've been telling them the Bills were going to go 12-4 since the Trent Edwards days. I always had it in my mind, though, that at the beginning of the season, the Bills were going to be good and that we could have a really good team. If you look deeply for the first time, and now so I'm having these problems because I predict them to be 12-4, and I'm just thinking in my mind, is this the Bills homer in me coming back, or are they really good? And I think you don't make a lot out of week one, but I think that there was some stuff baked into week one, and you look at the second half or even last season, and that they lost the playoff game, but they went toe-to-toe with the Texans. I think they are a really good team, and I think that they can be, and all these things that we're saying about them might just be true, and it almost doesn't feel real. Like we're a week into the season, and it almost feels like, really, are we in the season yet? Because there's a really good chance this team goes up 2-0 to start the year, and that if you're trying to get back into the playoffs for back-to-back seasons, I mean, the percentages, if you go up 2-0, especially in your division, man, I mean, you're a numbers guy. I'm not a big numbers guy, but the percentages go up quite a bit if you start off the season like that. So a really fun time to be a Bills fan, and I just hope that they can put together a nice run this year.
So a couple quick questions before we close out the show. Chris Taroni is asking thoughts on Terrell Dodson. I'm actually going to compare him a little bit to Jerome Baker that we just talked about. Yeah. If you're asking him to go downhill and fill gaps and make tackles in the run game, big hits, I think he can do fine. If they get him isolated in coverage, I think he's probably not made for that.
But I think the benefit to the Buffalo Bills is if we don't have Edmonds and Milano, I don't think they're going to force anything to really put him out there on anyone. Correct. I think you're going to see a lot of zones. They're going to try to protect him with safeties. You'll see some linemen dropping back from time to time. I hate to say Trent Murphy's pretty good at dropping back. Jerry Hughes can do it. He can drop back, and he's pretty good at dropping back. So you'll see some of that. I think they're going to try to protect those linebackers that aren't.
I even think we see some dime. We might see maybe Dean Marlowe and Saran Neal on the field at the same time with maybe just AJ Klein. I think that we'll protect it that way as well.
Yeah, they're smart. Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott, they're not going to expose. I mean, if there's a drop off on this team depth wise, the biggest drop off besides quarterback 1 to quarterback 2 is linebackers. And it just stinks that this is what's happened right to start the season. Thank God these are not long-term injuries by all indication, because I don't want to go 3-4 games with Dotson or any of these guys. No. Playing a number of snaps that they shouldn't be getting.
Yeah. Tyler Pearson here asking about the screen game. I think that's a great call. We didn't really touch on that when we were talking about the exposure that Jerome Baker and Landon Roberts go. Could be a huge part of it. I'd love to see them let those guys get aggressive, get downhill, and drop the screen in right behind them. I think that's a great call.
And Josh, that was a huge improvement that I feel like not enough people were talking about in Josh Allen's game. They didn't get any big chunk plays with the screens, but it sounds silly. But when I see Josh have nice touch on a screen pass, like that's everything to me, because that's everything he couldn't do year one. And to see him be able to execute those, I think you're going to see some big chunk plays come from that.
Eric has prohibited me from talking about the big nickel, so I'm not allowed. We'll see where those things go.
It's in our contract.
We're actually not allowed to talk about it. So we appreciate you guys. Tonight's been a lot of fun. Make sure you're checking out everything at cover1.net. We have a lot of awesome stuff coming out. Make sure you're watching for the matchup show. Obviously, anyone who's on Twitter saw that the All 22 has been delayed, so we may or may not have a matchup show here at some point, but hopefully we will.
I think we will.
I have faith that's going to be coming out. But if not, make sure you're still checking out the Slack channel. Is the best part of what we do. It's the best community in all the Bills Mafia. You can come in there, be able to hang out, be able to talk. Game day is fantastic in there, and it's just a really good, constant conversation with smart Bills fans who know a lot about what's going on and want to be talking to other people who are as dedicated and bought into the team as what we are.
Smart Bills fans, and also me.
Also Aaron. Smart Bills fans and Aaron.
Plus me.
Yes, plus Aaron.
Yeah. The worst thing, we didn't get to the worst thing I missed on Twitter, because the worst thing on Twitter is me being back on Twitter.
Aaron Quinn is now the worst thing on Twitter. The world is just a flat circle.
It really is.
It just comes back around. So we appreciate you guys. The chat was awesome tonight. Thank you, everybody, for chiming in. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you to Tom for jumping on from DolphinsTalk.com. Thank you to Uncle Jumbo's and West Her. You have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.